Hello and welcome back to the Purpose Over Profit podcast. This week we've got Ben Hulme on, who is a sales consultant who works primarily in the healthcare sector, and he helps his customers by being a little bit more pirate, by thinking more pirate. And this is nothing illegal about this, but he picked up this concept on the back of a book by Sam Conniff a few years ago, and has woven that into his practice. It's all about pushing boundaries, challenging traditional ideas, creating communities, fair democratic process, kind of really challenges a lot of the myths that people might have about pirates. But it's a great concept, and I think you're going to really enjoy listening to more about that concept and what it means, but also just the background of kind of creating meaningful work through sales. So sometimes sales can get a bit of a bad rap around cold calling and frustrating and being in the face of people. But what Ben talks about is really, when it boils down to it, it's about helping people solve problems. So if you can understand and help them see things from a different perspective, and help them fix their problems, then ultimately selling becomes very, very easy. So I'm sure you're going to love the episode, and it'll be great to hear your thoughts. Remember, if you enjoy it, please share, like, and give us a thumbs up on whatever channel you are watching.
Welcome back to the Purpose Over Profit podcast with myself, Chris, and my co-host, Darren. This week we've got Ben on the podcast. Ben, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Darren, hi, good to be here. Beautiful blue skies. What a lovely morning it is. I'm Ben Hulme. I'm a sales and business development expert, and I have my own little business called Hulme Redwood. And I'm also a little bit of a fan of a conversation about being a little bit more pirate, and helping people to just think a bit differently and maybe challenge the rules in the world a little bit more.
That's brilliant. I mean, we're going to come on to a bit around being more pirate as well, and I think that's a really crucial piece, because there's similarities between all of us, because we're all a bit of a pirate as well. We've all had, we've worked for big corporations, and we've stepped out of that corporation to try and own something for ourselves as well. So really, what is business development, if you can help our listeners can understand that, who people don't know what that is?
Yeah, sure. So I my trade, my craft, the work that I do for wages is around sales, business development, and leadership. So 25 years ago, I stumbled into a job that was to do with selling stuff, and I was like, oh, okay, pay away to give this a go. I didn't have a really clear plan or direction, and certainly coming out of school, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And it did take me another 25 years to figure that out, but here I am. So what I found really quickly was in sales, which covers a whole spectrum of things, everything from double glazing in used cars to taking orders over a counter, through to helping organizations solve multi-billion-pound problems. There's a full spectrum of jobs in there. But I started off around staffing and technology and IT, and I very quickly learned that by working really hard, I could do okay. So that was a good place to start. And because my mind's always a little bit curious and likes to wonder and ask why we're doing things, I then quite quickly got a little bit bored and thought, well, what if I work a bit smarter? And what if I try and do things a little bit differently to everybody around me? And I discovered that actually by just looking at stuff from a slightly different perspective, I was able to be even more successful and not have to flog myself quite as hard either. And what I discovered was that I really enjoyed helping my customers to solve a problem. So understanding not what it is that you want and need, but why do you need that, and what are you going to do with it, and how is it going to help you get where you need to go, and why is that important? Because if I could solve for those problems, then we would do business. But also there was a kind of sense of satisfaction of a job well done, rather than just flogging a commodity. I was actually helping somebody else get towards a bit of an outcome. So that was kind of how I got into sales. But yeah, I quite like doing this.
It's a nice way to look at it as well. Like, sales gets a bit of a bad rep. Like, I know, like, when I think of sales, it's cold calling, it's someone trying to flog you some shit that you don't need. And like, actually, if you boil it down, I'm just reflecting as you're talking, like, sales really is about solving problems for people. Ultimately, that's what you're buying. You're exchanging some value, money, for helping to, solve some sort of problem in your life.
Yeah, I hope so. And Darren, you're right about that bad reputation. I mean, I've seen so many job titles where you've got these weird and fancy, wonderful job names, and when you unpick it, so what's the job? Oh, it's a salesperson. Well, yeah, but we don't like to call it that because of these bad connotations. Anybody that's seen the I think it's on Netflix, White Gold, about the boom in the double glazing market will know that you can be in a job that is involving selling and not be a very nice human being and then doing a good stuff out of it. But the way I see it, sales done well is really simple. You just got to do three things. Number one, you've got to find out and understand what it is somebody needs and why. And secondly, you've got to give them something that does that really well. And then thirdly, you've got to make sure there's some fair exchange of value. So, you get paid or you're trading value in some way, shape or form. And if you do all those three things fairly well, then you're doing good business. It's the first one that gets sales a bad name, right? Find out what somebody needs. You need some new windows. No, well, I'm going to trick you into thinking that you do. Any sale where the salesperson walks away without looking back and saying, "Hey, are you happy with that?" That's not selling. That's just scamming people. That's just trickery, and it's no fun at all. It's not what I'm into. It's not what I'm about. And certainly, I think there's a growing body of people in professions that are around sales and business development that really want to have a bit of pride in our industry and in our craft and in the work that we do.
I guess as well, there must be a pressure element to this, because I'm going back to my own career as well, looking at, because obviously I worked in brand and was part of advertising as well. So there's all that kind of fluffy stuff that sometimes you can't quantify. But then you get the financial directors that are looking at the bottom line saying, well, how much money did we bring? What was the sales? What was the targets and everything else? So there's that kind of sometimes disconnect between two different departments or different teams, and the pressure sometimes salespeople are under to try and generate sales as well must be tough.
Yeah, I agree that salespeople come under a lot of pressure. And I think that is kind of part of the job that they sign up for. And also, I look at every organization I've ever worked with or worked in, and when you talk to salespeople, they say, well, we're the most important people in the business because without us, there'd be no customers, right? And then you meet the account management and the customer support team and say, well, we're the most important people in the business because without us, all the customers would leave. And then you go meet the product guys and they say, well, without us, right, you wouldn't have anything to sell in the first place. And then you meet finance and they say, well, if we didn't get the money in, it would all be pointless. So who's the most important person in the business here? And actually, when you go and talk to those teams, the finance team feel as much pressure in their job as the salespeople do in theirs.
Yeah, it's all about strategy as well. It's no different, like at any sort of level. Those three things that you mentioned, like understanding, understanding the customer, understanding a person, or understanding a business. Like all of these things are a fundamental starting point to be in business in the first sense. Even if you take it down to a micro level, one person helping another person. In order to do that, you need to understand that person, understand who they are and what they want. So it's no different in any other, whether it's a big, large multinational company. Ultimately, that premise kind of still holds true. And I really like how, from an ethical standpoint, that is like you hold that absolutely true. It feels like before you start doing anything, because otherwise, what's the point? There's no, otherwise it's just taking money, for service as opposed to really feeling like you're helping someone solve a problem.
Yeah, and I've always worked in a kind of business to business type of role. I've never done a job that involves selling to direct to consumers. But I think back to the transactions that I've made, the importance of when I bought something of a high value, a car or a house or whatever, the person that's been involved from the other end, I mean, sure, they might have been smooth or friendly or warm or done a bit of chat or whatever, but I've never bought a car that when I wasn't going to buy a car, I've never had the money to throw away to buy a car to the eye. Or, coming to buy the home that we live in now as a family. It was a long, difficult decision to choose what kind of home we wanted and which home it was. And when we saw the right one, we knew it was right and we decided that we wanted to buy it. Of course, the person, at the other end did all that tricks about trying to get it closed earlier, and we can offer this limited discount and all that, but we weren't not going to buy it, right? That was just about putting the deals together. That was just a negotiation phase. For me, sales isn't about getting somebody to make a decision that they weren't going to make. It's about helping somebody to buy. So if we've got a way of helping you solve a problem, and it's a good way of doing it, and we can agree to some commercial terms that might be appropriate, great. My job isn't to sell this to you at all, it's to help you to buy it. So maybe that's one of the reasons why salespeople come under pressure. And I talk to business leaders and founders and executives all the time that say, we've got a problem with our revenue, with our bottom line. We need to get more customers in. We need to get more cash through the door. So our salespeople need to sell more. Yeah, but that's putting the whole weight of this problem on probably one person right to the point. And actually, when you break it down into smaller steps, it's probably not the whole of sales that's not working. There's probably one or two parts of that process that aren't quite getting on as well as they need to be. It's usually not the need to make more cold calls. Though, don't get me wrong, sometimes it is, but actually, most times people have got enough opportunities coming into the organization. It's what they're doing with them in terms of, are they the right opportunities? Are they helping those customers to buy and to do business? Are they managing their own expectations in terms of when that can be done? Because if it's going to take 9 months for a customer to do business and you need an order in 3 months, then you need to have started 6 months ago, guys. There's no sales magic that's going to fix that for you. There's nobody that's going to turn up with a black book of contacts and suddenly solve all the problems. But doing it well and unpicking what does that customer really need and how can we help them, and how can we help them with their process of getting this thing procured and implemented and up and running successfully. That for me is how we do good business and how we do it well.
And that just listen to you as well, it sounds obviously, there's different parts to it, but it's all part of the same journey, isn't it? The customer buying journey, the journey of the business as well, they're on as well. So everyone needs to play their part crucially as well. So if you're not targeting the right kind of customers, you're not understanding what they want, you're not giving them the right kind of value, then it's not going to be the right fit as well. Because you're right, we've all been to car showrooms the odd time when we're in the position to probably buy a car, and we're probably getting swayed to add on this and add on that and add on this. But you're thinking, well, I remember going for a car, and at that time we had a buggy. And they were saying, what about this car? And the boot was tiny, absolutely tiny. But we knew we wanted a Golf because the boot was big at the time. Really simple, basic stuff. But if they understand what the person wants and what they need, then they'll give you that extra stuff. And you'll probably spend more money or go with that person. But everyone's got a crucial role to play. I think that's partly, am I hearing that right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, definitely. And I like to scratch away at somebody's motivation. If somebody's motivated to sell based on what they want to sell you. So I've got this product, I need to go and sell it to all these customers. And if you've only got one product to sell, then the challenge is finding the right customers that are going to need it the most, rather than trying to ram it down the throat of people who it's not a fit for. And if you're trying to buy a car and you need one with a boot, but the person selling you is trying to flog you a convertible, then somewhere along the line, either you're in the wrong shop or they've just not taken enough time to understand what it is you need and why you need it and why that matters to you. And if you did come out with a convertible with no boot, then Chris, me and you ain't friends anymore.
Well, actually, no, we still have the Golf. We got rid of it a while ago for a CRV, a bigger one, as you always do for these kind of things. But just going back then, actually, because I think it's quite important. So what are the kind of key things you normally see kind of businesses making the mistake of this kind of sales process? Is it to do with teamwork? Is it what are the kind of, what could people do just now that could actually help them, if you like?
Yeah, and definitely no single silver bullet, one size fits all is the short answer to that. Yeah. But I think common themes I hear again and again and again are, I think an expectation on somebody to perform, some kind of magic is a common mistake. And I'm actually not sure, as I say that out loud, whether that's the execs and business owners actually expect that of their people, or whether the people hear what's asked of them and take that on as being their expectation. But if I was in a sales role and I've got a customer success team and a finance team, then I'm thinking, how do we work together to solve the problems here? What I often see is that sense of internal competition where, usually by accident, not by design, you're going to have, say, a sales team and a marketing team. And the marketing team will say to you, well, we're doing our bit. And what sales need to do is And you go to your salespeople and you say, what's going on here? And they say, well, we're trying really hard, but what the marketing needs to do is great. That's the problem to unpick. It's not specifically what people are doing. It's the internal perception of each other's roles and what's important. And when you get those people around the table and say, okay, let's stop all this and work out, number one, what action needs to be done? What are the things that we need to have happen? And then let's break that down into simple stages, in a simple chunk. What are the jobs to be done without getting too bogged down in all the detail of it? But if part of it is we need to find customers that are interested in our product and service, great. Let's work out how we solve that problem. But separately, then what? Well, we need to understand what they really need from it and why. Great. So that's a different job to be done. And breaking it down into little steps helps you do the third bit, which is say, well, okay, if these are all the steps we've got to take, actually, how would we and should we organize ourselves around this customer buying journey, as you described it, Chris, rather than it being our sales process where we've assumed that marketing do this and they've assumed that sales are going to do that and everybody's assumed that finance to do something else, because probably none of those things are quite working for anybody. Breaking it down, drop the job titles, drop the assumptions about who should be doing what, look at what needs to be done to help the customer to get their goals, break it down into simple steps, and then amongst the team say, okay, how can we best organize ourselves around each of these steps? And you can end up with a much more fluid set of processes and relationships internally. And you should end up with a lot better understanding between teams.
Sounds like a lot of it is around just the adaptation. You're saying it's not set up that way, but we kind of naturally go into these tribal sort of departments of, right, that's finance, that's sales, that's marketing, and actually if that's not us, that's them. And it's about trying to, you coming in and breaking down some of those barriers and getting people a bit more focused in terms of actually what is the objective, and then trying to collectively say, forget about what role or job title or whatever it is you're in. Your kind of new role is about where do you fit in best in order to meet this objective. Yeah, absolutely. And there's lots of barriers to that, not least of all job title, trainings, egos, incentives, all that kind of stuff. But fundamentally, if we start with the assumption that everybody in the team wants to come and do a great job and wants to get a good outcome, as long as they're able to step back far enough from the pressures of the moment and go, okay, why have I even taken this job? Or why am I working for this organization? Or what's my goal 2, 3, 5 years down the line? And then you go back to, okay, in that case, how do we solve for this? There's a lot to do with trust and relationships and respect there. And I'm sure many people that have worked with me over the years will talk to you about how wonderful I am. But I'm sure if you dig deep enough and hard enough and long enough, you might uncover just 1 or 3 people that say I'm a right arsehole at times. And sometimes I've got it wrong and not taken enough time to understand somebody else's point of view or what their needs are. And sometimes I clash with human beings as personalities as well. That happens, and I'm okay with it. I learn from it. I try and get better every day, and I'm still not perfect, as my kids will tell you. But breaking down those barriers, for me, I think a great conversation to have when forming a new team or trying to solve a problem with a bunch of people is to just pause a little bit. And before you get into detail of how you're going to do it and what you're going to do, go back a few steps and say, well, why are we doing this? What's the goal? What's the aim here? And then secondly, to just have the conversation with each individual person and ask them to share what's most important to you. So what are your priorities out of this? Or what are the things that are your kind of non-negotiables? And somebody might say, well, my priority is I want to get an order from this customer because we know we can do a great job with it. And somebody else might say, well, I need to finish work every day at 3 o'clock for at least 2 hours because actually that's when my kids are finished school and I've got to go and pick them up and whatever. Great. These are equally important.
I think that's brilliant. Yeah, that comes back to a conversation we had with somebody else recently. It's kind of about culture as well.
How does that go down though? I mean, I'm just wondering how that conversation would go down, and like I'm thinking of the corporates I've worked in. Like if someone's like, if say we brought you in, and I know you work in healthcare, and I'm interested in this to get onto pirate, be more pirate concept as well. But I mean, I love it. This is a bit more pirate, that type of question. But even just calling that out to say, look, those two things are equally valid. Yeah. How does that type of, I mean, is there any conflict when that comes up?
How does it not? How can it not? If you've got hard recruited, highly paid, trained, skilled, expert professionals dedicated to a mission that you've got on your team because they're the best possible person for the job, right? And you're gonna be a dick with them about clocking off for a couple of hours or worrying about what time they started work. If you are logging in, if your factory is only open from 9 till 5, fine, let's use some time cards. But if you're trying to solve a problem, I guarantee that when you're waking up in the morning and brushing your teeth, you're probably thinking about that problem, but you've not logged those hours, have you? And I think we need to expect that people are going to be diligent and hardworking and professional and expert and apply themselves to the task. It's not a time and material job. Now, don't get me wrong. If our key client meeting is always between 3 and 5, and that's the 2 hours that you can't be there, we've got to find a way around that. And we might need to negotiate that with a customer, or somebody else could do your bit, or whatever it might be. All of these things are absolutely fine as well. But having that agreement about what are the 1 or 2 or 3 most important things for you, what are the 1 or 2 or 3 non-negotiables for you in how we work together as a team for the next day, week, month, year, lifetime, whatever it is. That's so helpful because it allows us to get past that wrong expectations. Right? Yeah, I expected you to be online at 3 o'clock. Why did you expect that? Because I hadn't taken the time to realize what's going on in your life.
And this is going to be the case regardless. So if I need to finish at 3 o'clock every day because that's most important to me, I'm going to do that because it's most important to me. So you'd rather know that as a collective when you're working, if I'm working as part of that team towards an objective rather than not. So it is kind of this almost just getting it out on the table and then working with those parameters.
And there's a flip side of that as well, because I've worked with lots of people that work odd hours for lots of different reasons. And some people are workaholics, and some people because they're juggling other things, and some people because they find themselves most creative at 4 a.m, right? So I've got a client that I've done some work with recently who are brilliant and exciting and zany and great fun people, very passionate about what they do. And the founder, Stu, he just gets up at 4 a.m. because that's what he does. And he does a bunch of work and he fires out a bunch of emails. The danger is if in somebody receiving that email think, oh crap, that's expected of me, right? If you get an email at the weekend, you've got to respond at the weekend. If people have this sense that somebody else somewhere else expects them to do something, and then secondly, allows that sense of other people's expectations to drive them, but that's another topic, then that's a recipe for disaster. Because I might be working late in the evening because that's my good time, or because I've juggled my day in a different way. But if you've already done your stuff for today and that's the evening to your precious time with your family, then please, please, please do not be thinking that I'm expecting you to read that email or whatever it might be. So getting those expectations right is so important.
Well, I think that kind of touched upon, I know an agency as well that are trying to recruit some people, and they've been struggling recently to recruit the right kind of people because people have reevaluated their circumstances because of COVID, because of where they want to work, when they want to work, and basically the kind of job they want to work in as well. So they're finding that hard as well. So I think people are becoming more in a way confident around what they want for their future. So if they're working for an organisation like you're saying there, I remember working for the corporation Darren worked for, and you'd receive emails the next morning that came out at midnight that night because people were working that late and they'd want an action done by 9 o'clock that morning, 10 o'clock that morning. You'd be like, I've just logged in. You're completely surprised. So I think people are starting to reevaluate who they want to work with and what business matches their values as well.
Yeah, I did want to hear a story from somebody I worked with who I had a huge amount of admiration and respect for. Wonderfully smart woman and a great friend as well, who came over the years working together. But they'd taken a step up, taken a promotion, and were finally getting a week off on holiday with her family, and had been told by her then boss that she should take a laptop with her because it was expected. And just for me, every part of that just sits wrong. What expected by who, and what if you don't, and why are you telling me this, and who is it that's really creating the expectation here? But for a whole lot of reasons, I just think, wow, that's really uncomfortable. If I want to go on holiday and choose to take some work with me, then that's wonderful. But if your operation can't survive without me for a week, then we've got a serious succession problem here, because I could well leave or get hit by a bus. These things also do happen. So yeah, having that respect for people and some sense of balance is important. And Darren, to go back to your point, the other thing is, if every day is a fire drill, if we're working at 110% all the time, when there actually is an emergency, right, when something does big come up, there's nothing spare. So maybe some of the stuff that we're doing that's so urgent and so busy and can't wait till the next day, maybe it's not that urgent after all.
I mean, sometimes unfortunately, these priorities are priorities that are made by the individual themselves, and it's not sometimes a company priority because they want to move something on and feel they can move on to the next piece as well. But I get that kind of piece around the concept of actually not being able to log off, because even if you're that involved in work, it can take you probably 2 days of your holiday to kind of start to finally shut off, and then you maybe only have like 3 or 4 days left of actually time off, which is crucial as well. So, I mean, I just want to touch upon back your kind of background as well, because obviously in business development, you've moved into that, you've worked for your own your business as well, but you've actually started your own business. What was the biggest driver for creating?
Oh yeah. So what was it now? About 14 years ago, I was doing sales business development, and I got into healthcare, and I didn't plan to get into healthcare, especially. I was looking for a new role, and I was offered an interview by a company that was selling some software, which I've done a lot of. And they were selling it into the NHS, into healthcare. I was like, oh, that's a bit different, but I don't really know much about it. Let me go along and see. And when I looked into what this firm did, it was a small startup company in the Midlands, and they developed a piece of software that actually did a pretty simple thing. It served up a prompt. It served up a reminder to clinicians halfway through a process that would just help them to be aware of some information and make some different decisions. And technically, I thought, well, that's relatively quite straightforward and simple, but the effect that it has, what it does is it helps doctors to focus more on patients and use their precious time well. It helps patients get better medicine and better healthcare, and it saves the NHS 40-50 million quid a year as well. It's like, oh wow, okay. So hang on a minute. If I was to take this job and be successful, well, number one, I get paid okay. And number two, the customers using this product, the doctors find it helpful, so there's a benefit there. But actually, there's this whole another layer of benefit, because their beneficiaries, the actual patients, were going to get better healthcare, right? Get better health outcomes and reduce risks of ill health events. And the health system, the tax-funded health system that we're so passionate about in the UK, the NHS, it's going to save a whole chunk of money as well. This is like a win-win-win-win-win. And when I went to meet the people, and I met the guy that's going to be our boss, and I met a couple of the team, I thought, I like these people and what they stand for and what they do, and I think I can come and do a good job here. So we really, was excited to join that company and fell in love with working in healthcare for all those reasons. Because if we're doing business in healthcare, number one, you can't really go and trick an NHS organisation to buy something that they don't need. Though mistakes do get made, fundamentally, there's enough kind of structure in place there to protect sensible decision making. But it's really hard to do business in healthcare, really hard to do business in the NHS. So working hard and working smart got really kind of pulled to the fore there. But most importantly, it's got that benefit of when you get to the bottom of what the prospective customer needs and how you're going to help them solve for that, you can see the wider value beyond the immediate benefit and the immediate sale. There's that wider social health impact, and with my own children, with my own family, with parents that are slowly but surely getting a bit older, that stuff kind of starts to matter a bit more. And more so than in any other sector I've ever worked, what I found more and more is particularly working in healthcare and working in and around things like the NHS types of organisations. Once the person you sat in front of sees the value in what you're doing, that is absolutely only the first step. Helping them to work out how to buy it, helping them work out how this is getting implemented and funded is such a key part of that whole customer buying journey. So being an expert on helping the customer to solve those problems as well has become a part of that role. And that I just find that fascinating, because it never stands still and it's never straightforward. But when you finally get there, it's really rewarding.
Sorry, I was going to say, for anyone watching this and listening to it, you maybe don't pick it up quite as well, but just seeing your face light up when you're talking about that, you can see just how passionate you are about healthcare and working in that space. And I'd imagine kind of you walking around anywhere in the UK and kind of having a feeling you're contributing positively because of the work that you do, which must feel great.
Thank you. It does. I know that I am not developing the next drug that's going to save, that's going to save people from dying of cancer or help, premature babies. So the contribution I know, let me not get ahead of myself here. It's a small role
it's this janitor that helped put a man on the moon, isn't it? That analogy. You heard that story about Kennedy walking past, and it's about understanding that yes, you are contributing because you understand that purpose and you feel that pull to the healthcare sector for what it gives more than just the vacation.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that I am not ever going to be a skilled surgeon. I don't have the skills and knowledge training to do that, and I'm not sure I'd ever be able to acquire them. In fact, I'm pretty sure I couldn't. But I know what I can do. What I am good at is helping to unpick and understand problems that people are having and work out how we can help them to solve them, and having that mixture of kind of rigor, process, and a curious mind to ask different types of questions and look for different ways of solving for these things. Right, and so I can do that, and if that's my little bit of a contribution, and that helps everything else work better, then that's got to be great. For me, the worst outcome is when we can see that this thing is going to help improve that process, which is going to get better outcomes, and we're unable to help the customer to buy it because it means that those outcomes don't get achieved, and that improvement doesn't get to take place, and those savings aren't made, and that's when I feel really bad if something doesn't come off.
But that probably takes us nicely on to the kind of Be More Pirate and sales piracy, because you're talking about kind of looking at something, unpicking it completely and breaking it apart and then seeing where the solution could be as well. And that kind of takes us on to the Be More Pirate. Would you like to kind of explain to our listeners what Be More Pirate is and the concept behind it?
Yeah, I'm going to say that. Well, I wrote this book, right, called Be More Pirate, and I wrote it under a pseudonym. That's not quite true, though. There's a book by a guy called Sam Conniff called Be More Pirate that I stumbled across a few years ago, which just struck a chord with me. And one of the themes in it is you steal like a pirate. So Sam, I'm nicking all your ideas here. I'm going to ask them off as my own.
Show us the t-shirt. Get the t-shirt on show.
Yeah. So hang on. That's the book, right? For those that can see the camera, it's called Be More Pirate. It's a good read. And after it had been launched, there was a pirate gathering on the Golden Hind in London, and I went, and somebody had made some t-shirts.
Awesome.
So I've got my very own. It's a lovely t-shirt. It's quite old, but it's still, I've washed it fairly recently. So it's kind of turned out okay.
It doesn't quite make the transition onto Zoom. That's why I thought I'd get you to stand up and show it in its full form. Yeah, well.
There we go.
So look, there's a match. Anyway, it's not my only t-shirt, but I did think I'd wear it today just for you guys. So I dug it out from the archive.
Love it. So
Be More Pirate is about lots of things, but bits of it that struck a chord with me were, number one, we've got this myth of pirates being these, people that were scary criminals and, the outsiders and really bad. And actually, when you unpick it all, when you look at the golden age of pirates, that's not necessarily the true story. Now, that was a story that was perpetuated by the establishment of the time, the East India Trading Company and the Navy, who, if we know our history, it turns out weren't that nice, actually. I think there's a fair few statues being pulled down around the country now, or having plaques put on them to tell the real story, which is powerful. But at that time, there were a whole bunch of people that were, conscripted into the Navy, whether they wanted to or not, right? And it was not a good life. And out of desperation and out of need, they started to form different types of societies. And the book, the podcast, whatever, get into that, read it on your own. And I'm not going to try to tell the whole story, but what I took from it in particular was this concept of break rules. If you see a rule that doesn't make sense and you follow it, then you are the problem, right? If you see a rule and you don't understand why it makes sense and you have to go away and find out, well, why is this a good idea after all, then that's completely fine. But the greatest atrocities and crimes of all time were not usually committed by people that were breaking rules. They were committed by people that will say, well, I was just doing what I was told and following the rules. Right, there's some pretty nasty things in history that have happened that way. So let's not assume that all rules are necessarily good. So they may well have been, fit for purpose at the time. So breaking rules in a good way and creating new rules, better rules, changing the way that things are done is just always been a part of my heart, soul, and brain anyway. didn't go down well at school. But I would still to this day argue that our education system isn't fit for purpose because it's teaching people how to recite previous knowledge rather than challenge and think for themselves in the future. But hey, that's a different topic. So, and there's this notion of let's go and cause some good trouble and let's reorganize, and actually being big for itself isn't necessarily such a great thing after all. And that kind of stood me in good stead when I was working in a large corporate, and I was enjoying lots of aspects of the work that I was doing because I was learning loads of incredible stuff, working with some super smart people, helping some of our customers to try and tackle and solve some of the healthcare's biggest problems, which is work to be proud of. And what I found was that in that corporate environment, increasingly time and energy and stress was spent satisfying the corporate rather than satisfying the customer. And it got to the point where I was looking around at my friends and my colleagues, and people were stressed and unhappy. And I personally had stopped enjoying it. So I decided I had a choice to either leave or to try and change it. And being as how there's several 100,000 people in the organization, I thought, well, I'm going to try and change it. So I tried that for a while and had some good fun. But I don't think I will have managed to change the whole of the organization. But what I was able to do with a band of other people that seemed to follow the same thinking was to say, well, let's try and do some stuff and embrace this corporate message about culture and values and try and promote some of that behavior locally. So in the UK, we got a bunch of people together from across the business that all agreed that we all wanted it to be a nicer place to work, and we wanted to help people get more out of it. After a while, somebody said, "Oh, how did you get permission? Whose idea was this, Ben? How did you get permission to set up this culture club, whatever it was that we were meeting every month and taking people away from work?" And I'm like, "What permission? Shit, no, I just did it." Right? I heard one of our top executives talking about why culture and values matter, so I decided to just do something. And I'm hoping not to get into too much trouble about it, but I've never been one for permission. I've always preferred the apology afterwards.
And did that come out from reading the book, or was that just inherently built into you from a young age?
All and both. I think the book tells a great story, and it brings it all around this theme, which is so relatable, and you can start talking about rum quite quickly, and maps and pieces of eight, and it's a great narrative. But actually, the underlying principles are we've got to just encourage people to think for ourselves and be ready to ask the question, why? Well, just because that's the rule. Okay, that's absolutely fine. Why is that the rule? Who is this rule serving? Is this helping our customer? Is this helping the people of our customer serve? Is this helping us in our careers to do well? Is it helping the organization get where it needs to go to? Or is it just a rule that's been created by somebody that's created it because somebody else told them that they have to go and make some new rules about some stuff? Things get lost along the way. And so having the courage to stand up and ask why and break the rules is important. Most of the rules are not even written down. Most of the rules are everybody thinks that somebody else expected them to do something. Right, so we go back to answering emails at the weekend and at 10 o'clock at night. Is expected of me. Said who? If you ask your boss, do they expect you to make yourself ill for work? They'd say, hell no. I expect you to look after your health and your well-being. Otherwise, how can you do a good job for us, right? The behaviours and the habits that people pick up don't always support that bigger aim now.
It's that culture, isn't it? We keep on coming back to culture with an organisation. You talked about Culture Club. I'd love to know if that was the song you had on playing when you're having these sessions as well. But even I loved as well, you spoke off camera before about the Pirates, how they started equal pay and all this kind of stuff, and there was no gender biases and all that kind of thing. That was phenomenal. You never considered that.
Yeah, and I'm not going to try and rewrite Sam's book or many of the things that spun off it. But at that time, right, if you were in the Navy and you say, I don't know, got injured, lost a limb, then they have no use for you. You are kind of put off the ship, and probably for a life of destitution. What the pirate crews did was they wrote different rules. They said, in our pirate crew, we've got a code, we've got a set of rules that are non-negotiable. Number one is everybody gets equal pay and has an equal say. So the pirate ship, the pirate crew had absolute equality. It was, it was a prototype democracy, right? Even if you were a different gender, different sexuality, different color, any of those things, just didn't matter. Everybody got equal pay, they got equal say. And when you go on a mission, the captain would set the strategy, the quartermaster would kind of lead on the culture, but the rest of the crew, it was, everybody had an equal voice and was expected to contribute what they could in the way that they could. If somebody were to lose an eye or a leg or an arm, they had written down how much they would pay that person to compensate them for the loss. And the habit was they would try to find a way to keep you productive as a member of the crew, despite that disability, as opposed to saying, well, you're not used to us and chucking you off. So, to be acting in that way in the face of this giant navy that's pursuing you around the world and calling you criminals and lawbreakers is pretty bold. But it was out of necessity, right? Why else would you want to join a pirate crew? Well, because you're going to get looked after, because we're going to care. And if we do get into a skirmish with the navy and you do lose a limb, right, we're going to look after you and care for you. And in fact, many times the pirate ships would be confronted by the navy in a battle, and number one, they try to avoid fights at all costs, but that's a whole other story. But actually, the flag, the skull and crossbones, what it stood for was surrender or die, right? Surrender would mean come and join us. Set yourselves free from this slavery that you're in. Come join us, right? Come and be a part of it. And so pirate crews would grow. What they did really well was they would have a pirate code. And this idea of let's get together and let's agree and enshrine in writing what are things that we stand by. We as a crew stand for this and stand by this and won't stand for these.
So can a manifesto of sorts?
Absolutely a manifesto, absolutely. And so going back to, even if you're working in one of the largest corporate organizations in the universe, when you and 4 people get told you're thrown together on a project, get together, become a crew, form a manifesto, agree those principles, agree that code. What are the 3, 4, 5 things that we stand for, that we stand by? Hopefully, at least one of them is going to be doing things that are good for your customer. Hopefully, at least one of them has got something to do with what the corporation needs out of the project. But hopefully, at least one of them is going to be, what do we as human beings need to get out of this? What do we value in the way that we interact with each other, or how we operate, or how we respect each other's skills at the times? And having that manifesto, that code, and for God's sake, write it down, means that every time that team gets together to try and solve a problem, or to try and go back to their pay matters or go back to their customer, they've got something to frame it around, which is more than the expectation of there's some rules that somebody somewhere may have just assumed that we were all going to follow. So you break rules, you write your own rules, and
there's something in that about responsibility as well, though. I know we spoke a bit like off camera, but taking that responsibility. So if you're thrown into a team, 4 or 5 people, then take that responsibility to own it and grow it and figure out what it is that you stand for. Where do you think like we stand just now? I guess we've obviously come through a period in COVID where we're being I suppose it's been quite restrictive and decisions are being made for us. I know we had a guest on a couple of months ago that spoke about, she works in sales, but was saying people were struggling to make decisions she's seeing, particularly young people, because of this environment, or she's making that assumption it's because of this environment. Do you see there's a lack of kind of will for people to be, or young people to be taking responsibility?
Yes and no. I think the last couple of years has thrown up lots of different angles. I've certainly seen and met a lot of people that have, through this period, through lockdowns and through furlough and all the isolation and all these things, had the opportunity, taken the decision, or even been forced to really reevaluate what matters to them. And spending time with people and choosing which people you really want to spend your time with and how you interact and how you connect certainly is a part of that.
You're going to be in my bubble, you're not.
Well, yeah, it creates a bit of conflict too. It's like, okay, you're allowed to invite 3 people around for Christmas dinner. I've got 4 siblings. What am I going to do with that? Or what if, right, they've all invited each other and not me? Anyway, but yeah, that happens too. So it's thrown up a lot of that. I think as well as many people have gone, actually, I want to have a different life. I don't want to be quite such a wage slave, or maybe I want to get out of the city and live somewhere a bit closer to nature, or just away from all that. Remote working, again, is a big revelation to some people, and some of us have done that our entire lives. I also do think that there's been, in some cases, this tendency to, my new phrase is outsourcing responsibility. Yeah. I don't think it's a new phenomenon. I've just invented a phrase for it. But to look to a government or a local authority to set the rules that will keep us safe and therefore I won't get ill is foolish, right? There's a huge amount of making personal decisions and personal responsibility, but also going all the way back to education and employment and the management of people. If in a workplace we expect the boss somewhere to understand everything and know everything and have all the answers and tell us what to do, then actually we're belittling our role to play in that. And a corporate directive, for me, is a guideline of where we're trying to get to, and it's down to the individual to work out how we apply that, not just assume that it's right. I think back to bringing up kids and education and the idea that it's wonderful to have a school system that's going to provide education and pastoral support for my children. I mean, I'm so grateful for having that, and I'm proud of paying my taxes to support it. It's incredible that in this country we have a nationalised health service that's there for everybody and seeks to provide the same high standards of care regardless of your kind of background and contribution to income and all those kinds of things. It's incredible that if people fall on hard times, there's a social security safety net, but all these things should, to me, be the absolute safety net, not the assumption, right? Who's responsible for me getting it? It's not my GP's fault if I decide to eat badly and smoke loads of fags. Though, if I want to try and make some changes, I'm hoping that they'll be able to help or point me in the right direction. It's not my school's fault if my kids grow up to be disobedient and naughty. I'm the parent, and this sense of outsourcing responsibility for decision making for me is a real worry. It's a real fear that people maybe feel paralyzed or disempowered or don't have the skills or knowledge or know everything. But really, we're all going to be on the earth for only so many years. It's down to everybody to make the best of the situation and go, okay, well, what do we know? What can we do? What information do we have? Let's make some decisions about this. Let's get on with doing what we can with good intention. And if we get it wrong, we can change our minds and say that I was wrong. Right? That should be okay, rather than assuming that somebody else has got all the answers and we must just do what we're told.
Well, that's what they say. I mean, they say you only pass this way once and you want to make it the best you can as well. And you've got to then pass it on to your children as well, because we've all got kids. We spoke about this off camera as well. And that outsourcing responsibility, I love that term as well, because we spoke again off camera just briefly around homeschooling and how for me, I had to do the homeschooling as well. And that gave me an opportunity to kind of connect closer with my kids and understand actually what they were doing on a day-to-day basis. And we've kept that up as well. And it brought us closer, but also showcased like how much time you probably don't spend with your children, even being present in the moment with them when they're not at school as well, because you only get a good few hours with them, and then they're probably going to their bed as well, and then it's the weekend as well, and you're kind of stuck in that hamster wheel of life. But with the lockdown, with us all having to stick to our bubbles of free siblings or whatever else it was, it gave you that kind of grounded approach and made you grateful for what you had as well. But other people, unfortunately, like my neighbour who doesn't have any family around, lived alone, he's now back at work in the office because he needs that social environment around him as well. So you've got to be conscious of your surroundings as much as possible.
Yeah, and there's definitely not going to be one size that fits us all. And I wonder about government and I wonder about leadership, but I also see this day to day in a kind of work context where, if we are looking for this one person to know the answers, if we're looking for our elected leaders to know all the facts and get it just right, that's kind of a crazy false expectation. It would be great if we could have somebody smart saying, here's all the information and here's what we think is the best course of action right now. But let's learn as we go, and let's be ready to correct if we need to.
I don't know what government that would be, to be fair, in this kind of current scenario.
Yeah. I mean, politics is a strange universe. But again, you apply that in a workplace or even in a home context where you go, okay, based on what we know, here's the direction in which I go as a business. Here's what our customers need us to help solve them for. I often come across, particularly people in sales and business development, that are struggling and don't know why, and they're kind of waiting to be told the answer. You say, well, great, tell us what to do. Well, at the start of your career, fine, we can give you some direction and show you what's worked in the past. But if we assume that somebody else knows the answer, then all we're ever going to be doing is at best, we'll be doing the best of what used to work in the old days. And in any kind of competitive commercial environment, if somebody tells you that they've got the magic formula to sales, then that's wonderful. But if they tell you what that is, then it's no longer the magic formula. And like any business guru's book, right? Whatever the secret to success is, it's only working now. Tomorrow we need to see something else. So having people that are smart enough, sharp enough, courageous enough, and supported to go, okay, I can see why that's how we do it now, but how can we change that? How can we make it better? What isn't working? What can we break here? How can we rewrite these rules? It's so important. And bringing young people into the world of work and encouraging them to be curious, to ask questions, and encourage them to say, please teach me how it's done today so that I can break that and reinvent that for tomorrow and make it better, because we've got to keep moving forwards. I think that's so important. It's such a skill. And just teaching people obedience doesn't take that. But again, there's a personal responsibility about saying, well, if you go to work asking to be told what to do, then you're always going to be at the back end of the curve, and that's okay, because somebody's got to be there. I just don't want it to be me.
I love that. And actually, I was going to just say, we're going to wrap up in a minute, but I was going to say, I love the competitive piece you've mentioned there. I love the fact that you're trying to break the rules, you're pushing boundaries and all this kind of stuff. And we spoke briefly before, again off camera, just about you're looking to do an Ironman next year.
No, I'm not ever looking to do an Ironman. That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. Okay. So things I said I'd never do. There's a long list of things that I said I'd never do, and one of them was an Ironman, because it's a stupid idea. Not least of all because it involves running a marathon when you're exhausted, and I don't ever want to run a marathon because my knees can't take it. But I know that part of my makeup is I'm naturally quite lazy. If I don't set myself a challenge, then I'm not going to get out of bed and go for a run or ride a bike, and I will therefore get lazy and unfit and overweight and die young or painfully. So I need to do stuff that's going to keep me going and keep me motivated to stay fit. And then I read somewhere some training blog about somebody that had done an Ironman, and they had a run-walk strategy. And so at this moment, I was like, oh, hang on a minute. So you can walk a bit at the end. Oh, fine, sign me up then. I'm doing that. So this culminates in next July. I think it's next June. The Ironman UK in Bolton have accepted my entry, and they're going to let me tag along, and I'm going to swim and cycle and run and walk and crawl and cry for about 12 or 13 hours. But I'm absolutely going to do it if it kills me, because there's just stuff you've got to do before you're 50, and it's getting really close. So I'm going to do an Ironman before I'm 50. I'm going to try and do it next year. And if that doesn't work, then I'll try it again the year after. Wish me luck.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think there's a hidden gem about just taking responsibility and living your own ethos there about being more pirate. Like figuring yourself out and knowing, yeah, do you know what? I'm a bit lazy. I think all of us are actually inherently lazy. If you can find a lazy person that can do something, then great, because it'll probably be the easiest way with least friction. But knowing yourself and then knowing what you need to do to put in place to keep yourself fit, healthy, because you want to feel that way. That's taking responsibility. So yeah, I love it, and yeah, good luck. Neither Chris have I have done that. We're trying to convince Chris to do a marathon just to push him into one part of it.
Well, do you remember, Darren, a couple of years back I shared with you, do you fancy doing an Ironman? You laughed at me, and then I shared it with the rest of the team, and one person said yes, and I looked at the schedule you had to do, and I completely empathise and slightly pity you, Ben, as well, to be fair, because I remember the schedule of what you had to go through, the pain barriers, the dedication. You have to be 100% motivated, by the sounds of it, you are, which is tremendous as well.
All you've got to do is be able to swim a bit, be able to ride a bike that you feel fairly comfortable on, and be able to run. And then just do a lot of like loads of it all in one go. I have the grit to do it for more hours than you dream to. So yeah, could I told people I'm going to do it? I can't not.
Here's another part of social proof as well that you've committed to doing it. So that
and also obviously sidestepped the marathon comment as well. Thanks, Dan, for that.
I think we
signed you guys up as well. Didn't I tell you?
Yeah. That will be the bell.
We'll get Chris committed on air at some point. But listen, it's been lovely talking to you, Ben. Such a great chat there. There's so much that I like, this outsourcing responsibility. I read the book last year. Responsibility Rebellion. I forget, he's a Scottish guy from my hometown, Dunfermline, but I forget his name now. But very much along the lines of what you've just spoke about. And I love that. I think we need much more of that. And I think a lot of the framework that we're set up in this country doesn't help us with that. So I think we need to work harder to let people know about that they can take responsibility for themselves, and they really should as well.
Yeah, for sure. Well, guys, it's been great talking to you both. Thank you very much for that. And let's just keep on getting out there, breaking rules, causing some good trouble, and having a bit of fun along the way.
Exactly. Well, good luck for next year in the Ironman, and we'll look out for that coming out in social media at some point.
All right. Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Perfect. That was excellent, Ben. Thank you very much. And how can people get in contact with you? How do they find your company, etc.?
Yeah, easiest way to find me or to reach me is definitely through LinkedIn. So if you go on LinkedIn and look up, Hume Redwood, Hulme Redwood, or Ben P. Hume, there I am. By all means, find me a message on that. I love to meet new people and chat and connect. I find it odd when somebody sends you a connection request and say, "Hey, great to meet you," and then they don't reply. But that aside, love to talk, love to meet new people. There's a link on there to some of the sales piracy stuff. And every Thursday on Clubhouse, we have a sales piracy clubhouse room. So again, anybody's come and join the conversation, meet some people, share some thoughts, and have a laugh with us there. So that's Thursday, 5 o'clock on Clubhouse at clubhouse.com. Whatever it is, /sales piracy. Is the trigger words there.
We'll put the details in the bio as well for this, so don't worry about that.
Yeah,
so click it. That's fantastic. Well, people will be looking forward to that. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Cool. Cheers, guys.
As always, thank you so much for listening to the Pop Pod this week. If you'd like to leave a review or share the podcast with others, then that'd be awesome. You'll find us on Instagram at the Pop Pod, and on Facebook we have a community group called Purpose to Progress. Anyone can join. And we'll be back every Monday with a new episode, but until then, stay on purpose, and we'll see you next week.